Some legal cases just have this way of sticking with you, you know? And the trial of Nnamdi Kanu, leader of IPOB.
The indigenous people of Biafra, yeah. Advocating for that separate state in southeastern Nigeria.
Exactly. It's a big one. Touches on some really fundamental legal stuff, societal questions too.
Oh, absolutely. And it's not like a quick thing. This trial's been rolling since, what, 2015?
Yeah, his arrest back then, charges of terrorism, treasonable felony, serious stuff.
And now we're seeing the cross-examination pick back up, and honestly, some pretty remarkable things are coming out.
Okay, so let's get into that. What's really grabbed our attention is this recent testimony, right? From a DSS witness.
That's the Department of State Services. They're calling him PW1 or AAA in the records.
And our goal today really is to dig into what this witness actually said. And maybe just as importantly, what they didn't say. Because, well, it's been a bit surprising.
Definitely. And one of the unusual aspects, right off the bat, this witness testified behind screens.
At the request of the federal government, yeah. Adds a layer of intrigue, doesn't it?
It does. So in the courtroom, you've got Justice James Omotosho presiding.
Prosecution's led by Adegboyega Awumalo. He's a senior advocate of Nigeria.
Right, top tier. And the defense lead is Kanu Agabi. And then this DSS witness, PW1.
So what was PW1's actual role in all this? What did he say he did?
Well, he stated he was part of the team that initially arrested Kanu.
Okay.
And he was involved in getting Kanu's statement and then escorting him to Abuja.
Right.
He also mentioned being one of 5 officers there during an interview with Kanu, one that was actually shown in court.
Okay, so he was directly involved early on.
Exactly. And that leads us to, honestly, probably the biggest moment so far from his testimony.
Which was?
The defense asked him point blank, when you arrested Nnamdi Kanu, did you find any instrument of terrorism on him?
A crucial question in a terrorism trial.
Absolutely. And the witness's answer, just no.
Wow. A straight no.
Yep. Pretty powerful considering the charges.
So following on from that, what about the items they did find? The things presented in court?
Right. The defense asked about those too. Asked PW1 if anything looked, offensive on the face of it.
But obviously dangerous.
Yeah. And again, his assessment was basically no. Nothing seemed inherently suspect or like a tool for terrorism.
So the physical evidence picture is interesting.
It is. And there's more. PW1 mentioned analyzing Kanu's phone.
Okay. Standard procedure, you'd think.
Well, yes, but then he stated that the analysis was considered immaterial by the prosecution.
Immaterial?
Yeah, and so it wasn't actually presented as evidence.
Huh. You have to wonder what was on it then or why it wasn't relevant.
Exactly. It does make you think. And another point the defense raised was time.
How so?
They asked PW1, look, these items were confiscated almost a decade ago now. Wouldn't many of them be, obsolete, outdated?
Makes sense, especially with electronics.
And the witness basically agreed, yeah, that's possible.
Okay. And what about records? Did they ask if items were ever returned?
They did. PW1 confirmed records like that should exist, but he didn't keep them personally.
Got it. So moving slightly, what about the arrest itself? Kanu wasn't alone, was he?
No, there was a lady with him. The defense asked about her too.
Yeah.
PW1 testified he found no weapon, no instrument of violence on her. And he said he didn't see her presence as helping or facilitating terrorism.
Yeah, okay. And the bigger picture. Did Kanu name names? Mention anyone working with him?
According to PW1, no. Kanu apparently didn't name anyone.
Right.
And the witness also said he didn't personally know of any other individuals currently on trial for terrorism related to, the Biafra agitation.
So that led the defense to say, basically, Kanu's the only one on trial for terrorism linked to Biafra right now.
Well, PW1's response was a bit more nuanced. He said, yeah, others were charged initially with Kanu.
Back in 2015.
Right. But he didn't know their current trial status. He did say he knew about supporters like Simon Ekpa, but mainly through the media.
Ekpa. He's often mentioned.
Yeah, and PW1 mentioned knowing about the DSS supposedly trying to get Ekpa extradited.
Okay, let's shift to maybe the core of the terrorism charge. Incitement. Violence.
Crucial aspect, yeah. The defense asked if Kanu was charged with actually physically damaging property.
The PW1 said.
His answer was interesting. He said, maybe not personally and virtually.
Virtually, meaning online.
What's the implication? Yeah. Referring to social media stuff, messages that allegedly incited violence.
But here's the key question, isn't it? Did anyone act on that alleged incitement?
Exactly. And this is maybe the other huge point. PW1 admitted under oath.
Yeah.
He didn't know of anyone who actually committed violence because Kanu incited them.
Wow. So allegations of incitement, but the prosecution's witness doesn't know of any actual resulting violence.
Correct. That's a pretty significant admission, wouldn't you say?
Definitely. It really raises questions about how they're linking the rhetoric to actual terrorist acts.
What else did PW1 recall? Well, he did remember Kanu calling Nigeria a zoo.
Okay, that's a known phrase Kanu used. Inflammatory, sure, but...
Right. And interestingly, he also seemed to back up something the defense often argues.
What's that?
PW1 recalled Kanu stating clearly that IPOB, well, that they don't bear arms.
And don't provide armed training.
Exactly. That IPOB doesn't do that, which, directly contrasts with the profile of most groups labeled terrorist organizations.
True. Now, the defense didn't stop there, did they? They broadened things out.
Yeah, quite a bit. They started asking about all the terrible violence happening elsewhere in Nigeria.
Like the killings in Kaduna, Zamfara, Benue, Plateau, up north. Tragic stuff.
And they asked PW1 directly, are these killings linked to separatist agitations like IPOBs?
And his answer?
To the best of my knowledge, no.
So separating the violence, that's interesting.
Very. It suggests that, in this witness's view at least, the widespread insecurity Nigeria faces isn't directly tied to the specific charges against Kanu.
Did they push that further?
Yeah, they asked about just general safety, like are the highways safe? PW1 said to a larger extent, kind of acknowledging it's a broader problem.
Not just about separatism.
Right. And then the defense listed this whole catalog of violence. Attacks on farms, churches, mosques, schools, kidnappings, train attacks.
All things sadly familiar from the news.
And asked again, are these things the result of separatist agitation?
Let me guess.
Tino B1 again, no.
So according to this key prosecution witness, the really widespread violent insecurity in Nigeria seems separate from Kanu and IPOB's specific situation.
That's certainly what his testimony seems to suggest.
Okay, just to round this out, let's quickly touch on the trial's history again. It started way back.
2015, yeah. It's been a long road. PW1's testimony is just the latest step.
And Kanu wasn't always alone in the dock, right?
No, initially there were 4 others charged with him, but then February 2018, the judge at the time separated the trials.
Because Kanu had left the country by then.
Exactly. So they proceeded against the others while Kanu was, let's say, unavailable.
Right. So bringing this all together then, what's the big takeaway from this deep dive into PW1's testimony?
I mean, the headline has to be this. A key prosecution witness in a terrorism trial.
Yeah.
Stated under oath he found no actual instruments of terrorism on the defendant when he arrested him.
It's pretty stark when you put it like that.
It is, and if you step back, you really have to think about what that means, given how serious the charges are, how long this has gone on.
Absolutely. You've got these grave allegations, terrorism, treason, but then a core witness says, well, I didn't find the tools for it on him.
What does that potentially signal about the prosecution's overall case? How strong is the link they're trying to draw?
It really leaves you, the listener, with a big question, doesn't it?
It does. When you consider this testimony, no instruments found, no known violence caused by the alleged incitement, the witness confirming Kanu said IPOB isn't armed, and separating Biafra agitation from other violence.
What does it all tell you about the actual evidence being presented here? And maybe about the whole complex situation around separatist movements and how the state responds.
Yeah, maybe it prompts you to think about the difference between, strong rhetoric and provable violent action on the ground. Where does one end and the other begin in this case? Something to definitely mull over.